Thank you very much for coming. It's a great pleasure to be able to welcome His Excellency, the High Commissioner of Pakistan, to the AIIA branch of the Australian Institute of International Affairs. This particular branch of the Institute has a very long history of congenial engagement with members of the diplomatic corps serving in our capital. And it's always been a great privilege for us to be able to obtain from those serving a perspective on international relations and on bilateral relations with Australia, which can then inform our own reflections on where Australia sits in the world and how it relates to other states. And this is a particularly auspicious moment for us to welcome His Excellency, because the relationship between Australia and Pakistan is a very long-standing one, indeed, going right back to 1937, and it's one which has been marked by the posting of senior Australian officials to Pakistan over a long period of time, and also senior officials of the Government of Pakistan to Canada as well, and that has been a marker of the significance of the bilateral relationship between our two countries. It's a particular pleasure to welcome His Excellency, who has recently taken up his appointment as High Commissioner of Pakistan after a distinguished career as a professional diplomat. He joined the Foreign Service of Pakistan in September 1993 and has served in few postings abroad, including in Washington, in London, and in Dubai, as well as in a number of very important positions within the foreign ministry itself, including as Director General for Afghanistan, Iran, and Turkey, the South Asian SAARC, and Director General for Economic Coordination at the President's Secretariat. His Excellency holds an MBA degree from the University of Punjab in Lahore and a Master degree from London University, and is also an alumnus of the National Defence University in Washington. As part of our fostering of free discussion, this evening's deliberations will be held under the Chatham House rule promulgated by the Royal Institute of International Affairs, which provides as follows, and I quote: "When a meeting or part thereof is held under the Chatham House rule, participants are free to use the information received, but neither the identity nor the affiliation of the speakers nor that of any other participant may be revealed." And this is a really important rule for institutes of our kind, because it consolidates that sense of candor, which is so important in engagement between the representatives of different states. We have participants online from the branch and also with us here this evening, and it's therefore a great privilege on behalf of both those elements of our audience to welcome His Excellency this evening and invite him to speak, and we'll then have a period of questions and discussion after that. So
thank you so much.
Welcome.
Assalamu alaikum, and a very good evening to all of you. It's an absolute pleasure for me to be among you. Many of you I have already met, so it's good to be among friends. I'm extremely grateful to the Australian Institute of International Affairs for providing me with this opportunity. Let me begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet and pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. Let me also acknowledge Professor William Malley, Mr. Heath McMichael, and all of you. It's good to be here with you. As I'm sure most of you would know that Pakistan is a developing country located in South Asia. We gained our independence in 1947, as Professor also mentioned. To be precise, on 14th of August 1947, and in 4 days' time, we'll be celebrating 76th Independence Day of Pakistan. And all of you are cordially invited to join us in our flag hosting ceremony on the 14th of February. Pakistan, we are the fifth most populous with 220 million people, 64% of whom are below the age of 30 years. For the moment, Pakistan, our national efforts are focused on long-term development through focus on our geoeconomics, with our human resource being our greatest national asset. Pakistan has borders with India to our east, China in our north, Afghanistan in our west, and Iran in our south. Because of our geography, Pakistan has had both challenges as well as opportunities. The foreign policy of Pakistan seeks to promote, protect, and advance our national interest while also contributing to international peace and security. Our policy is one of friendliness and goodwill towards all nations in the world. In fact, the Constitution of Pakistan, we are one of the few countries where the Constitution prescribes the way forward for the country in terms of its foreign policy. The Constitution of Pakistan makes it incumbent upon the state to contribute to international peace and security, to develop friendly relations with all countries in the world, and also to encourage peaceful settlement of international disputes. So, coming to our region, as I mentioned, our borders with 4 important countries. Let me begin by talking about Pakistan's relations with Afghanistan, the situation in Afghanistan, the current and then past situation in Afghanistan. We have a almost a 3,000 kilometers long border with Afghanistan. It's a porous border. And when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, Pakistan was a key part of the international alliance led by the United States in the fight against Soviet occupation. Our key role contributed to the withdrawal of Soviet Union from Afghanistan and also its ultimate collapse. And our role was both acknowledged as well as appreciated by the free world. But once the Soviets withdrew from Afghanistan, the international forces also left Afghanistan, letting it become a hotbed for international terrorist organizations. Pakistan ended up receiving over 4 million Afghan refugees, most of whom still remain in Pakistan after 4 decades. We also got severe impact of the conflict in Afghanistan on our socioeconomic fabric. The Kalashnikov culture, the drugs coming in from a war-ravaged country, that all impacted Pakistan. Fast forward, the unfortunate incident of 9/11 happens, and Pakistan finds itself once again to be the front line in the war against terrorism. We did make a contribution. But again, the international terrorist groups, including Al-Qaeda, they turned against Pakistan, inflicting huge losses on Pakistan. We suffered over 80,000 casualties and over $150 billion in economic losses. While all this period, Pakistan was working with the Western Alliance, we kept on underscoring the importance of a political settlement in Afghanistan, because we always believed that there was no military solution to the conflict in Afghanistan. But against our advice, against our insistence, the US and the allied forces, they worked for a military solution to the conflict in Afghanistan. But what we saw, the West-backed governments in Afghanistan, they failed. They could neither secure the territory nor get rid of the international terrorist groups operating in Afghanistan. The governance also could not deliver. They failed to build a reliable security force or any other national institutions. So what we saw that the US again withdrew, leaving behind large security vacuum in Afghanistan. It was not only a security vacuum, but a looming humanitarian crisis also. Afghan President Ashraf Ghani fled the country, and within a matter of only nine days, over 250,000 Afghan security forces melted away. Taliban took control of Afghanistan. We again came forward and provided every possible assistance to the international community, including in safe evacuation from Afghanistan. With our assistance, over 80,000 diplomats, media people, international human rights organizations, humanitarian workers, they were safely evacuated from Afghanistan. These people were from 48 different nationalities, including Australia. But in any case, as we saw a humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan, we again insisted on a continued engagement with whoever is in control in Afghanistan, because we believe that disengagement is not an option. The international community has tried, tested, and failed in finding a military solution to the conflict in Afghanistan. Again, abandoning Afghanistan also did not deliver in terms of getting the desired results. So the engagement seems to be the most logical and the only viable option in Afghanistan. But I'll be happy to discuss in detail about the situation in Afghanistan or Pakistan's role or the future of Afghanistan in our question and answer session. To the north of Pakistan, we have China. China is a strategic cooperative partner of Pakistan. The relations between Pakistan and China are deep-rooted in our history, and the bonds of trust between our two countries always stood by each other. But let me share here with you that the strong bonds between China and Pakistan are not aimed against any other country. In fact, during the 1970s, Pakistan facilitated the dialogue between China and the US. In 1971, the famous secret visit by US Secretary of State Henry Kissinger was facilitated by Pakistan. We are proud to have played that role in terms of dialogue between China and the United States. Currently, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, a mega project, multi-billion-dollar project, that is a flagship project of China's Belt and Road Initiative. It is a purely commercial initiative, and we invite the international community, investors, business people from all over the world to come and invest in the 9 special economic zones being developed under China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. So let me clarify that this is not exclusively for China, but the initiative is open to anyone and everyone. Now, to our south, we have Iran. We have friendly relations with Iran. Pakistan supports the nuclear deal known as JCPOA, Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. We underscore the importance of all parties to the agreement to adhere to their commitments made under JCPOA. We believe that it is an excellent example of diplomatic solution to the difficult problems. So we continue supporting JCPOA, and we hope that it will be fully revived. To our west, we have India. The relations between Pakistan and India, unfortunately, remain tense, largely because of the Jammu and Kashmir dispute. The Jammu and Kashmir dispute is an internationally recognized dispute and longest standing item on the agenda of the United Nations Security Council. There are multiple United Nations Security Council resolutions that provide the way forward also for the resolution of the dispute. And that is through holding a plebiscite under the UN auspices to ascertain the wishes and aspirations of the Kashmiri people. Pakistan desires friendly relations with all its neighbors, including India. We have repeatedly expressed our desire to have good neighborly relations with India. When Prime Minister Imran Khan came into power in 2018, he said that if India takes one step towards peace and friendship, Pakistan will take two. But unfortunately, our desire for peace was not reciprocated, and the environment was further vitiated through India's illegal and unilateral actions of 5th August 2019, aimed at further perpetuating its illegal occupation of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. We believe that South Asia, because of the tensions between two large countries, India and Pakistan, remains hostile, remains hostage to the relations between the two countries. Regional organizations like South Asia Association for Regional Cooperation, SAARC, has also not been able, unfortunately, to make progress, largely because of the relations between these two countries. South Asia today remains one of the least integrated, economically integrated regions in the world. And we believe that peace is in everyone's interest. But for durable peace, we also believe that resolution of outstanding disputes is critical. Now, as for the US, Pakistan desired good relations with the United States. We've been a close US ally, in fact, once described as the most allied ally of the United States. We worked together during the Cold War. In Afghanistan, we fought together against the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan. There have been ups and downs in this important relationship, but still, even today, United States remains the largest destination of Pakistan's exports. It's one of our major trading and investment partners. A deep engagement with the United States, and we intend to further strengthen this important relationship and to further expand cooperation between our two countries. We have large Pakistani diaspora in the United States, which again acts as a strong bridge between our two countries. With the European Union and the United Kingdom, again, we have close cooperative, friendly relations, and there are multiple institutional mechanisms available to strengthen cooperation and friendship between Pakistan and the European Union, as well as the UK, which is now out of the European Union. Pakistan is one of the founding member of Organization of Islamic Cooperation, and we have excellent bilateral relations with all the member countries of the organization. Coming to the Asia Pacific region, we've seen that in recent years, a number of arrangements have been made, and different countries in the world, and particularly in the region, they have come up with their Asia Pacific strategies. Pakistan believes that all arrangements that increase confrontation need to be avoided, and instead those that encourage cooperation need to be pursued. In international relations, Pakistan believes that there is no zero-sum game. We believe that goodwill towards all countries, all nations, and the new Cold War mentality and dividing countries into camps, we believe would be counterproductive and need to be avoided. Now, coming to Pakistan's relations with Australia, Australia for Pakistan is an important country. We enjoy friendly and cooperative relations with Australia based on our historical linkages and our common interests. Australia is in fact one of the first countries that Pakistan established diplomatic ties with soon after Pakistan's independence in 1947. This year actually marks not only the 75 years of Pakistan independence, but also of establishment of diplomatic ties between Pakistan and Australia. Australia has maintained a resident mission in Pakistan since 1948. There are multiple institutional arrangements between Pakistan and Australia to strengthen cooperation between our two countries. These include bilateral political consultations. These include a joint trade committee, joint working group on border management and transnational crimes, defense and security talks, 1.5 security dialogue, and also parliamentary friendship groups in the parliaments of both Pakistan as well as Australia. During past 75 years, the relations between our two countries have expanded in the areas of trade, in the areas of science and technology, education, agriculture, water management. The two countries have also worked closely at the multilateral forum. We have often supported each other's candidatures in important organizations, including those of the United Nations. In terms of defense and security, let me share with you that Pakistan's relations with Australia in the defense and security area date back to 1912, way beyond the creation of Pakistan itself. In 1912, the first Australian officer got trained at Staff College, Quetta. And the first Chief of General Staff of Pakistan Army was also an Australian, Sir Ross Kane Mackay. He was an Australian. And ever since 1912, Pakistani army officers have been regularly coming to Australia for training, and Australian army officers have been going to Pakistan for training at Pakistan's Armed Forces Institution. Now, coming to the trade relations between our two countries, from a trade of less than $100 million, to be precise, $96 million in 2011, our volume of trade last year was almost $1 billion. So it is almost 10 times growth in bilateral trade between the two countries during the past 10 years. But still, it is less than 1% of Australia's international trade and also less than 1% of Pakistan's international trade. We believe that there is tremendous potential for further growth in the volume of trade between the two countries. Our two economies actually complement each other. Pakistan exports what Australia needs, including IT products and services, textiles, sports goods, surgical instruments. And Australia exports what Pakistan needs in terms of minerals, in terms of agricultural produce, pulses, wood products, steel products. So the two economies essentially complement each other rather than compete with each other. And then, as I mentioned earlier, there is also huge potential for cooperation between the two countries, and a lot of work is being already done in terms of agriculture cooperation, in terms of cooperation in the area of education, in water management. But one area of common interest where the two countries can work together is climate change. So we would love to enhance cooperation with Australia in the area of climate change. Working together would, I believe, will be of mutual interest as well as of mutual benefit for the countries. Now, again, in terms of the bonds between Pakistan and Australia, we understand that Pakistani diaspora here again plays very important role. We've seen significant growth in both the number as well as the influence of Pakistani community here. We have a diaspora of almost 100,000 Pakistanis here. It's an influential community. Let me share one statistic with you here, that the percentage of Pakistani-born Australians who attained graduation or higher education is 52%, Now that compares to 32% among other overseas born Australians, and 22% is the national average. So the Pakistani community with 52% is doing far better than the other communities here. We are proud of that. During the past 9 months that I've been here, I've come across many presidents and vice chancellors of the Australian universities where more than 10,000 Pakistani students are enrolled. And I was so encouraged to learn that most of the Pakistani students in the universities are doing better than the average students. So that's a matter of tremendous satisfaction and pride for us. And in terms of other bonds, I would say cricket is yet another very strong bond between Pakistan and Australia. It's a common passion. The other day, a friend of mine, an Australian parliamentarian, he asked me that you people are so passionate about cricket, but still it's not your national sport. So my answer was that it's not actually a sport in Pakistan. It's more than a sport. It's a national passion. The recent visit to Pakistan by the Australian cricket team brought a lot of joy to the cricket fans in Pakistan. And we look forward to the visit of our cricket team soon to Australia to take part in the T20 World Cup here in Australia. But then other than that, Pakistan produces sports goods, including cricket gear. So I think that is yet another linkage between our two. Australians, they are better at all sports, and we are slightly better at producing sports goods. So in terms of opportunities, business and investment opportunities for Australian businesses in Pakistan, with a large consumer market of over 220 million people, with a growing middle class, with a young and vibrant population, is an attractive market for businesses. In terms of Pakistan's investment framework, I'm happy to share that we have one of the friendliest investment regimes, not only in the region, but in the world. Almost all sectors of Pakistan's economy are open for foreign investment. And our national treatment allows the foreign investors to invest in any sector of the economy without the requirement of a local partner. I would particularly like to draw your attention to the growing startup ecosystem in Pakistan. During the past 18 months, the tech startups in Pakistan have attracted over $500 million from venture capitalists from all over the world, including the US, the UK, Dubai, Singapore. They're all looking at Pakistan with great interest. There are already over 24 Australian companies which are doing business in Pakistan and doing business in Pakistan quite successfully. So we invite further Australian businesses to invest in Pakistan, to do trade with Pakistan, to work with Pakistan. I do see a common desire on both sides to further expand cooperation and to strengthen their relations. But my last point before I open the floor for discussion is that it's important that both Pakistan and Australia do not look at each other from the prism of a third country. Australia has its own set of friends, so do we. So it's important that the relationship stands, survives, and flourishes on its own. And we believe that there's enough merit in that. With this, I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much for your remarks and particularly for your wide-ranging point. Could I kick off the discussion by raising a question about the architectures of cooperation that cover our countries? And I'd be particularly interested in your thoughts on the implications of the Quad, which has been an arrangement of interest to successive governments in Australia, which does provide a kind of footprint into South Asia, but which is also seen in some circumstances an effort to engage in containment of China. And does Pakistan see those kind of developments as neutral or as positive or as negative? I'd just be interested in Pakistan's perspective on that.
No, thank you very much, Professor, for asking me this question. And I knew that this question will come from the audience. Thank you. Thank you so very much for raising this. As I mentioned in my brief remarks also, that we've seen that during the past few years, different countries have come up with strategies about Asia Pacific and Indo-Pacific. And then new arrangements are being also made, even though Quad is not that new, but it has certainly been revived. So Pakistan believes that all arrangements that seek to promote international cooperation, but do not increase confrontation are welcome. But any arrangement that increases confrontation needs to be avoided. In terms of Quad, we will not accept the role given to India as a net security provider, to be honest. It's important to understand the dynamics of South Asia also. While we do understand that containment of China is a priority for many countries, but in the process, the regional balance of power should not be disturbed. It should not lead to an arms race in the region. It should not make any particular country a regional hegemon. So we believe that only those arrangements that seek to promote international cooperation, but do not increase confrontation are welcome. But those that increase confrontation, that disturb regional balances of power, need to be avoided.
Thank you very much. I'll open the floor for questions. Yes.
How do you do, Excellency? Thank you for that presentation. Martin, I'm the ACT branch. I'd love to ask you lots of questions about various things, but some of them, notwithstanding Chatham House rules, are probably too difficult to respond to. But so I'd like to focus on development. You mentioned Pakistan as a developing country, that's recognised, but there have been so many other developing countries around Southeast Asia, East Asia, and South Asia, which have seemed to me to be far more advanced in terms of getting investment, building industries. You look at the tiger economies in East Asia, Southeast Asia, even Bangladesh, another Islamic country in your part of the world. What has happened so that Pakistan, my impression is that Pakistan has not seized those opportunities as much as the other growing Southeast Asian and East Asian countries. What has stopped Pakistan from being at that sort of level whereby it's far more developed, it's seizing the opportunities for investment and the outsourced manufacturing that seems to be the path of many of the developing economies? What stopped it? What's held it back a bit?
No, good. Thank you very much. And I'll be very honest with you that I do accept that we have not been able, we failed to do as well as we could have or as we should have in terms of our economic performance as a nation. Unfortunately, our periods of growth have been followed by periods of lesser growth, and our pattern to grow has not been consistent. For example, only 4 years ago, 3 years ago, Pakistan was one of the emerging 11 countries in the developing nation. All the international credit rating agencies were recommending Pakistan strongly. But then recently COVID happened, and then the inflationary pressures happened, and Pakistan is one of those countries that relies heavily on imported fuel to fuel our economy. So that has been an issue and multiple issues. But I do agree with you that our economic performance could have been better. But looking to the future, as I mentioned in my remarks also, we consider human resource to be our greatest national asset. Even though Pakistan is blessed with some natural resources also, including some gold mines in the Balochistan province of Pakistan, where multiple companies are working, including some Australian mining companies also. And then we are an agriculture economy, mostly self-sufficient in our food products other than oil. We spend a lot of money on oil, edible oil imports also. So human resources, I think the focus of the government, current government, is on two things. One, on geoeconomics rather than geopolitics or geostrategic focus. And second, on the human resource development. So we hope that we will do better in future than what we've done in the past.
Yes.
Thank you very much. My name is Rosemary Ganley, and I have a long defence background. And the first Pakistanis I ever met were from the Defence Force when they were on exchange here, and that goes back a long way. But my question is about the pressures on Pakistan of such an enormous amount of young people who are looking for work and an enormous amount of refugees who are also looking for work. Seems to be an incredible pressure on the Pakistani government. How on earth do they hope to find work for all those people?
No, good. Thank you very much, Ruth. And as I mentioned earlier, certainly in terms of economy, and then our economic growth also needs to be in a way where we can create more jobs. And then the industrialization, we'll have to employ more people in our industry as agriculture sector is becoming increasingly more mechanized. But you rightly mentioned about the refugees also. In Pakistan, for the past 4 decades, we've been hosting over 4 million Afghan refugees. Now, this is a number which is larger than the Afghan refugees put together all over the world. Actually, many times more than the combined number. And when we talk about the situation in Afghanistan, again, that's why we say that the people of Afghanistan have suffered immensely due to the conflict, due to the protracted conflict in the country. But after Afghanistan, the country that has suffered the most is Pakistan due to conflict in Afghanistan. It's not only in terms of the Afghan refugees coming to Pakistan, but also in terms of its impact on the security of Pakistan. We've 2,600 kilometers long border with Afghanistan, which still remains porous, even though we are now trying to fence the entire border. So any security vacuum in Afghanistan has a direct bearing on the security environment in Pakistan. And when we say that we are a major stakeholder in the peace in Afghanistan, there are at least 4 reasons why we say that with so much of confidence. Because, one, we believe that if there is peace in Afghanistan, only then there will be no security vacuum in the country, which can then be exploited by international terrorist groups or other countries to fuel unrest in Pakistan. Second, only if peace in Afghanistan, at least some of the Afghan refugees will be able to return to Afghanistan to their if there is no peace in Afghanistan, if there is a humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan, there is always the fear of further influx of Afghan refugees into Pakistan that we cannot afford. Let me share with you a fact which very few people know, that during all this conflict, Pakistan has been providing every possible development assistance to Afghanistan. Despite our limited economic resources, we have provided $5 billion for development projects in Pakistan. We built roads there in Afghanistan. We built hospitals there in Afghanistan. We provided scholarships to the Afghan students including Afghan girls. There are over 10,000 Afghan students, including girls, who've been educated in Pakistan. And many of those got medical education in Pakistan. During my recent last foreign posting, I came across at least 2 Afghan women doctors who were trained in Pakistan and now practicing medicine in the UK. And I'm sure there must be many more here in Australia as well. So we've been doing all of this. And let me also share with you one point which we believe we need to clarify. We do not endorse what Taliban are doing. We do not stand for what Taliban stand for in terms of especially the human rights, in terms of the rights of women, in terms of girls' education. We do not. And also, we do not control Taliban. Neither do we want to control Taliban, because what we've learned from history is that Taliban or Afghans, and for that purpose, Taliban are also Afghans. Afghans, they are fiercely independent people, and no one has ever succeeded in controlling. So Pakistan is absolutely under no illusion to be desiring to control Taliban. And again, we are not also responsible or not ready to be held responsible for all the actions of the Taliban, like the rest of the world, the international community. We also try to persuade Taliban to adopt a path that is internationally acceptable, that is, we believe, good for them, that is good for the region. But what we have also tried to work with the Taliban is that we do not want the Afghan soil to be used either against Pakistan or against any other country. And we hope that Taliban will live up to the expectation. And again, in terms of, Taliban doing anything for Pakistan, they have never done that. There is only one, and that is again not a conflict, because the international border between Pakistan and Afghanistan, it is internationally recognized border. But many Afghans, they still call it Durand Line, and so do the Taliban. That is one area where at least they should have agreed that yes, it's. But again, as we said, we have no option. For example, other countries, I won't name here any particular country, they can afford to look the other way. They can afford to abandon Afghanistan. But unfortunately, being the immediate neighbors of Afghanistan, sharing 2,600 kilometers long porous border with Afghanistan, we do not have the luxury of either looking the other way or abandoning the Afghans, because we do have direct implications on Pakistan of any unrest. Let me share with you, I was in Afghanistan in my capacity as Director General responsible for Afghanistan, Iran, and Turkey, and I was visiting Kabul. And there I saw a small demonstration going on against Pakistan. And I asked my protocol and security people as to what's happening. They said yesterday Pakistan closed border and the price of tomato has gone up in the market, and these people are demonstrating against Pakistan that tomatoes have become more expensive because of the closure of border. And now that border was closed because of cross-border attacks from Afghanistan into Pakistan. This is the sort of situation that we are dealing with. It's a difficult situation, but as I said earlier, we do not have the luxury of either looking the other way or abandoning not only Afghanistan, but the Afghans themselves. And let me also share, we do believe that the people of Afghanistan, they have suffered tremendously. And let me again share an Australian friend of mine, again, a parliamentarian. She was working on bringing some Afghans to Australia, and few of them, they were stuck in Pakistan because they didn't have any documents showing that they entered Pakistan legally or so. So it was there's a security procedure that we need to go through. Anyways, we were able to get them out and then to move them to Australia. We are working very closely with our Australian friends on that. But again, how many Afghans will Australia be able to take in? At max, what? 4,500, 6,000, 6,500? But what about the 25 million Afghans, those who remain in Afghanistan? Now, all of those, they are not Taliban. The number of Taliban is estimated to be around what, 90,000. So what about the 24,910,000 Afghans who are still there in Afghanistan? So, you know, the only way is to provide humanitarian assistance, to engage with them and to ensure that no humanitarian crisis takes place in Afghanistan. And then these Afghans, they are providing necessary assistance inside Afghanistan, because the entire world cannot take all the Afghans out of Afghanistan. So it's absolutely essential that efforts are made to provide necessary assistance to the Afghans inside Afghanistan. Thank you. Yes.
Thanks. But first of all, can I commend you and Pakistan for what you do for refugees. I have Hazari friends currently in hiding in Pakistan, and they live in daily fear, as you probably know. I commend your country for what you do for protecting those people, particularly some of the women who are in hiding. And I can only apologize for the West's support in that space, which is just outrageous, really. And so inadequate, I couldn't begin to explain how inadequate it is. The realpolitik is that wherever conflicts happen around the world, people flood over a border, and you happen to have that very long border. Your support for those Hazari is that I remember reading some years ago that, and I'm afraid I don't know how accurate this source is, but the biggest source of American funding for overseas development was Pakistan. And I watched those figures with some surprise, and I couldn't figure out why America was giving so much money to Pakistan. And then I noticed a narrative in Pakistan which was increasingly anti-American, and you only have to listen to an Imran Khan speech to realize that that's the reality. And then I noticed Pakistan becoming closer and closer to China, at the same time as India, as you know, was becoming more and more antagonistic towards China, and they had all those border conflicts and actually still are at this day. And so I'm just wondering how much money now is flowing into Pakistan from the US, and how much does that compare to how much Chinese money is flowing into Pakistan?
Okay, no, thank you very much. You know what, Pakistan, we are not looking for foreign assistance. What we are rather looking is trade and investment, and then to expand and strengthen our trade relations with other countries. As I mentioned earlier, for example, US still remains the largest destination for Pakistani exports, and China remains our largest trading partner, to say that. And we have deep cooperation with China, not only in terms of trade, but for example, if we talk about COVID, mostly Pakistan's COVID vaccine, our vaccination program was based on the Chinese vaccine, because that's what we could lay our hands on easily. And then they are currently, to be exact, I think 36,500 Pakistani students studying in various Chinese universities. Now, there was a time when a similar number of Pakistani students were there in the US universities because of the English language, and then of course the American universities are good, but US, UK and Australia used to be the favorite destination for Pakistani students, primarily because of one, the quality education, and second, English language. But now a large number of Pakistani students in the Chinese universities. Also, again, we have deep cooperation in terms of security, in terms of science and technology. In the agriculture sector, we have a deep cooperation. But at the same time, we do not see and we do not want to be seen as Pakistan-China relations and Pakistan-US relations as mutually exclusive. As I mentioned earlier, we do not believe in the new Cold War mentality and then dividing countries into camps, which we think would be counterproductive. We think we can have good relations with China and with the US simultaneously. As I mentioned during my remarks in the 1970s, actually Pakistan played an important role in facilitating a dialogue between. I am not suggesting that any such role is possible at the moment, but again, that's a history. But it was certainly an important part of the history. And as you asked, any assistance coming from the US, I would say no. And then earlier also, there was this assistance coming in the form of Coalition Support Fund, which was largely a reimbursement of the expenses that Pakistan was incurring in our fight against terrorism, because we were partners. But again, any assistance that we received again in the fight against terrorism is just a minuscule as compared to the losses that we suffered because of our involvement in the war against terrorism. 80,000 casualties and over $150 billion of economic losses that we suffered. But again, because of our geography, we do not have the option. I mean, we've been willingly or unwillingly part of the great game. And I am not sure if we'll be able to play a balancing role in future also, as the tensions between the US and China continue to increase.
Thank you. Josie, do we have online questions?
Some of them have been answered already, but we do have one in relation to Australia and development programs in Pakistan. Someone online has mentioned that Australia has cut its aid budget quite significantly over the past 10 years in particular. And they're wondering what sort of impact that has on both relations between Australia and Pakistan, but also because the development programs in Pakistan have basically stopped due to that aid budget cut. How is development cooperation being rebuilt in light of that?
This is a good question. You know, I see it differently. I wouldn't say that a cut in the US Australian aid would have an impact on Pakistan-Australia relations. I would say no. Certainly, Australia has its own preferences, its own priorities in terms of spending, because certainly they do also have limited money for international assistance. And their focus now is more on the South Pacific nations. So we do understand that. But that doesn't mean that development sector cooperation has come to an end. We still work closely with Australia in many development areas, including agriculture cooperation, including cooperation in the water management. We've learned actually both Pakistan and Australia, we are water stress countries. Australians, they have learned how to optimally utilize the available water, and we think there's a lot that we can learn from our Australian friends. So I wouldn't say that development cooperation between Pakistan and Australia has come to an end because of the dying down of AIIAvision money. So no, that's not the case.
Given that Pakistan has a young population and an emphasis on human resource development as an engine of economic growth, do you anticipate that there will be a growing interest on the part of students from Pakistan to study at universities and colleges in Australia? And is that something which could be more actively supported through development scholarships from Australia?
No, yes, absolutely, Professor Mali. As I mentioned, we have a large young population. In fact, 64% of Pakistan's population is under the age of 30, and Australia still remains a favorite destination for Pakistani students. Before COVID, there were over 13,500 Pakistani students enrolled in various Australian universities. there still are more than 10,000 Pakistani students studying in different Australian universities. The government of Pakistan, through our Higher Education Commission, provides certain scholarships for studies in the Australian universities, mostly at the doctorate level. And then there are other scholarships provided by the Australian universities. And then many Pakistani students, rather most of the Pakistani students, they come to study in Australia through their own financing. But yes, more scholarships, more opportunities for Pakistani students to study in Australian universities is something that would be of huge benefit to Pakistan.
Yes, further questions? Yes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your talk, and I was very interested to hear your candid comments about Pakistan's concerns with your neighbours, particularly Afghanistan. And in that, you really answered a lot of what I was going to ask. But just to follow on from that, I've really got two questions. Has Pakistan formally recognised the Taliban government of Afghanistan? And secondly, does Pakistan see an opportunity to be, if you like, a broker to help not only the development of Afghanistan, but perhaps in the future, the normalization, once again, of relations with the rest of the international community?
Good. Two questions actually. First, regarding the quick one is recognition of Taliban. We do understand the importance of international consensus. So we believe that it's important to build an international consensus, and any decision with regard to the recognition or non-recognition of Taliban should be through international consensus. But again, the recognition and engagement with Taliban, we believe, are two different things. While recognition or non-recognition of Taliban as a legitimate government may be an option, but disengagement, we believe, is not an option. So what are the possible solutions to the conflict in Afghanistan and engagement with Afghanistan? One, go for a military solution. The international community has tried that, tested, and failed. The US spent over $2 trillion in the war in Afghanistan, but unable to find a military solution to the conflict. That's why Pakistan has always been emphasizing upon the importance of finding a political solution through intra-Afghan negotiation, through the engagement of the Afghans themselves. And second is abandonment. Again, an option. Again, tested, tried, and failed. What we saw is that when the international community looked the other way and abandoned Afghan, there was security vacuum in Afghanistan filled by international terrorist organizations. Afghanistan became the hotbed for international terrorist groups, international terrorism. So abandoning the Afghans didn't work. So now again, engage with them to avert a humanitarian crisis, to help innocent Afghans, those who are not Taliban, and a large number of, rather 95, 99% of them, they are certainly not the Taliban. Taliban are only foot soldiers, what 90. Let me also share with you, during this recent development in Afghanistan, what we saw is that the Afghan security forces, they were much larger in number, 250,000. They had air power. They had access to all modern weaponry provided by the US and other Western countries. Now, compared to them, Taliban were only 90,000 and had no air power, limited access to weapons, but still within a matter of only 9 days, the Afghan security forces melted down. President Ashraf Ghani fled the country, leaving the country in a turmoil. Now, did Pakistan ask President Ghani to leave? Did Pakistan ask the Afghan security forces to surrender? So no, but the failure of governance, corruption, all these issues, So West did try to build democratic institutions in Afghanistan, but did they succeed? The successive governments in Afghanistan, President Karzai, Ghani, they could neither secure territory nor could they succeed in getting rid of international terrorist groups in Afghanistan. They were not able to make Afghanistan free of international terrorist groups and could not stop Afghan soil being used against other countries, including Pakistan. So these are all the facts. These are all the facts on ground. So moving forward, again, I mean, disengagement could lead to a humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan, could lead to further deterioration in the situation in Afghanistan, lead to further deterioration of security environment in Afghanistan. These people, they've been living in caves for over 4 decades, and they'll continue doing that. But what about the ordinary common Afghans? So that's a question that the entire international community needs to ask themselves.
I was cut down, so we have time for one more question.
Thank you very much, Kanti Jena from the Royal Commonwealth. Your Excellency, thank you very much for a very reasoned and an honest manner in which you have answered all your questions. I'm in a very confusing position myself, coming from Fiji, of Indian background, but with a name called Kanti Jena. So you can expect what people ask me, the first question every time they meet me, is that, you know, are you related in any way to the founder of Pakistan? But it's a common day occurrence with me. With the Royal Commonwealth Society, we're very much involved with another way of diplomacy, and that comes through sport. Your Excellency, you didn't mention that some of the best squash players in the world come from your country. They beat Australia, unfortunately, and remained king for quite some time before Australian ascendancy towards squash again, and of course hockey. Those two sports, we seem to be always carried away by cricket. But the Royal Commonwealth Society annually has a cricket match of all the high commissions that we need to play with DPAC. So they use a kookaburra ball that's made in Australia, smashed to smithereens by a bat that is made probably in Pakistan with someone wearing your pads, etc. And they throw missiles which go across the border, which are the boundary lines for cricket, and cricket hit a 6 or a 4. Your Excellency, we thank you for your reasoned approach to this. And I join Professor Anthony Ma in the way he asked you the questions about very genuinely the situation that you have been you've been experiencing. Mine is not a question, but it's more a commentary that we're very pleased that you always support the Royal Commonwealth Society with the sporting activities that we have, particularly the annual cricket match. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think that's probably the best way of diplomacy that I can contribute to this issue.
Kanti Jinaji, thank you so very much, and always a pleasure to come across you. And for one, your last name, Jina,
Yes.
and second, for the very charming personality and a very friendly personality that you have. Even though yours was not a question, but let me make a comment on your comment about squash. We certainly, Jansher Khan, Jahangir Khan, for almost 2 decades, we reigned the word of squash. But only recently I checked our ranking in the word of squash, because we are organizing a squash tournament after Jansher Khan's name here in Canberra in the month of October. And I was slightly disappointed to learn that our best player in squash is now 40th seeded in the world. So it wasn't really pleasing. And about the cricket match that you mentioned, I did see an invitation coming from the Sri Lankan High Commission. Perhaps the match is on the 23rd of October.
Yes, indeed.
But let me say 23rd of October is the day when Pakistan will be playing India in the T20 World Cup match in Melbourne.
There you are.
At MCG, 120,000 tickets already sold. And the ICC people told me that while tickets for all other matches are still available, including the finals and semi-finals, the tickets for Pakistan-India game were sold out within 5 minutes of going open for sale. So that would be a day where everyone would be watching Pakistan-India match, because that is one of the major event in not only for India and Pakistan, but for the entire cricket loving world. So that is the issue, but
All I can say, Their Excellency, is that both India, Pakistan, and also Sri Lanka and Bangladesh, plus the UK team, they'll all be paying for the Commonwealth side against DFAT. Just to add that amongst us, we have the presence of Dr. Elmo Jacob, whose story I have narrated to you before, but Elmo Jacob's grandfather was a person who started during the old British colonial days a water system in a city in Pakistan, which is today known as Jacob Abad.
Okay.
And Elmo is a direct descendant of the person. So that might be of interest to the audience here tonight.
Thank you.
again, you have compelled me to make a comment on your comment. You know, in my earlier remarks, when I said it's good to be among friends, so a person with the last name of Jinnah, and then Jacob, of course, the descendant of Mr. Jacob, after whose name we have large city in Pakistan, Jacob, and then of course a former Australian High Commissioner to Pakistan. So yes, so an absolute pleasure to be among friends.
Well, I can't resist adding at that point that many years ago, I used to play squash, but I gave up when a hyper-fit Pakistani squash player had some health problems. I thought if it can happen to him, it can happen to me. So I thought it was time to move on. Your Excellency, it's been a great pleasure to be able to welcome you to the branch of the Institute of International Affairs. Thank you very much for your thoughtful presentation, which is richly in the tradition of engagement between our branch and the diplomatic corps. And we look forward to welcoming you to further activities in which the branch is involved. So I invite you to join me once again in thanking His Excellency for his remarks.
Thank you.